Good afternoon, everybody. This is T. Falcon Napier. Welcome back to Mastering Personal Change. This is our fourth and final session for this particular course. What we're going to start with is reading another ChangeGrid for one of our colleagues. This is the ChangeGrid of Christine Alexander Smith, one of our colleagues from Europe. And so Christine is joining us from London. And so, Christine, I'll unmute you in just a second or two. So you might want to get yourself prepped for that. But let's take a quick look at the activity list that Christine has created for herself. So let's see, lots of stuff about word sites. So ascertain who will host the website, how to transfer the domain names, purchase a WordPress theme, send logos and pictures over to Sumaya, define my target market, define the job that needs to be done for my target market, start writing copy for the new website, start collecting blog articles, ascertain a content marketing strategy, create new banners. They go on and on. This is a great, great, great list. So 21 activities. Now, a couple things I just want to point out about the activities. Let me just go to, let's look at the one about writing. Start writing copy. Um, in this particular case, we want all of the activities to begin with a verb. So I think writing copy for the new website or collecting blog articles would be a little bit more direct. But I think it's interesting that you've chosen to put the word start in front of it. So that would imply these things haven't happened yet. The reason why it may not have started, though, is because of where it plots on the change grid. So it's okay to leave it the way that it is. But when it comes to best practices, you guys really always want to make sure that a verb is the first thing that we are looking at. And for all the rest of the activities, that's exactly what Christine did. She started out with starting off with that verb, just those couples. And I guess suppose start is technically a verb, but I thought it was just interesting. Is the activity really about starting it, or is the activity really about doing it? If the activity truly is about starting it, well, then leave it alone. If the activity really is more about doing it, then let's begin with the core verb there for writing or collecting. So anyway, great, great, great article or great activity list. Obviously, very much focused towards her business strategy. And so again, the ChangeWorks system allows you to look at anything you want of any area of your life, and it gives you one continuous grid you could be using. So I like this. I like this a lot. So let's go ahead and select all the activities. And let's take a look at what this change grid would look like. So view the change grid. Yeah, Christina's saying it's actually about doing it. Yeah, so again, not a big deal, but try to start with the core verb there. Now, Christine's got stuff scattered all over the place. So let me just say a couple more things, and then Christine, I'm going to unmute you, and I'd like to get some feedback here. Now, the one thing that really gets my eye here are the importance ratings. I don't see any red numbers. And the importance rating again means that the higher the number, the more important. However, we do occasionally find that people invert the importance scale, thinking that the lower the number, the more of a priority. So a number 1 is a more important because it's like top priority versus a number 12, where in truth, our scales are the other way around. So Christine, I'm going to ask you one little thing here. Let me unmute you there for a second. Hi, Christine. Are you there? Yep. Oh, nope. She already told me she inverted it. All right. So let me just kind of do that. Yeah, Christine, I tried to unmute you, but I couldn't hear you there. So let me know if there's any kind of a technical thing we know about. All right. So this is an inversion. Everything you see as green then is actually red, and everything that is, well, yellow would still say yellow. That range isn't going to change. So the other thing is, did you also invert the size scale? So the size scale would be, wait, she says she can't hear me. Can you guys hear me? Yes, would be really, really reassuring right now. Someone weigh in. Stephen, can you hear me? Unmute yourself. Tell me if you can hear me. Yes, good. Thank you. Everyone else can hear me. Sorry, Christine. Stephen will help you sort that technical little glitch out there for just a moment. All right. So again, the other things might be inverted. This is not such a big deal when you're doing your own change grid, because obviously right now we could say, all right, Christine, let's go into these importance ratings. And anytime she gave herself a 1, the answer would really be that would be a 12. So I'm just going to go in and change these. And I'm also demonstrating. She gave herself a 2, that would be an 11. So let's change all these 2s to 11. That 1 would be a 12. This 1 would be a 12. This 1 would be a 12. This 2 would be 11. This 2 would be 11. 3 would be 10. 3 would be 10. 4 would be 9. 4 would be 9. 4 would be 9. And again, I want you guys to see me do this so you also understand how you can just go in and update your data anytime you want. 3 would be a 10. 4 would be a 9. 5 would be an 8. 1 would be a 12. 1 would be a 12. And 1 would be a 12. So I'm now going to save my work. Select all activities again and ask the system to view the change grid. So now you see all the nice little reds where they really belong. And go like, see, so now with the exception of, there should have been 1. Nope, 8, 9, 10, 11. No, the level of challenges now, or importance is high now on all of them. Excellent. All right. So now, yeah, Stephen, make a little note of that. I'm very curious to know about rating 8. Okay, now, so let's go ahead and read this. Activity number 2 is the one that's causing Christine the highest level of tension right now. Activity number 2 is ascertaining how to transfer domain names. So she's basically saying when it comes to that, I really don't know how to transfer the domain one place to another. Christine, we can tell you it's either going to be very, very easy or it's going to be very, very difficult, depending on how long you've owned your current domain name. If you own it only recent times, you can now do it completely online. But if we wanted to move ours right now, we'd have to do it with notarized letters. It all has to be done through the mail. It's really just a hassle. So hopefully yours is pretty fresh. Activity number 15 is plotting up in power stress, but very close to stress. This is ascertaining who the experts are in the field in which I'm working. So these are pretty big puzzles that Christine would be working on. Now let's go to the bottom of the grid for a second. You see she has very little actually in power apathy. There's a couple of things that are in the general vicinity right on the border, but there's quite a cluster of things plotting quite far down grid in apathy. And again, she's saying these are very important tasks. So let's take a look at these. Activity number 4, sending logos and pictures over to Sumaya. Oh, and again, we get that. That's sending something over. That's an email with attachments. Number 3, purchasing a WordPress theme. Yeah, that involves choosing one and giving them your credit card number. Number 19 is updating my 5-second pitch. Okay, so again, not a very big deal. If it's only a 5-second pitch, it's not more than a sentence or maybe 2 to be edited. Activity number 17, also plotting quite far down. Um, update my business cards in time for the website launch in March. So again, changing whatever the logo may be and all these other things she's sending over to Samaya, choosing the right font, all that. So these are things that are very, again, procedural, detail sorts of things to be done. Can you do them? Absolutely. Will you get them done? Probably, because they're important. But this is not where your tension really is. Your tension is around this cluster of activities that's plotting between power and power stress. So let's take a look at the kinds of things that are really, commanding your attention. And by the way, let me just switch the layer for just a second. Look at where you're at as far as intention and engagement goes in that cluster. So on the brink of, if not in, engagement, this is where the efforts are really being put forward right now. Let's see if there's any other questions here coming up. Okay, no, we're cool. So let's take a look at this cluster of activities. We'll do them in order 5, 6, 7, 8. 5, 6, 7, 8. We've got defining my target market. She's down there a little bit where there's an analytical energy. If I change the background, she'd be an analytical driver about that identification process. And that's really perfect when it comes to defining my target market. That really is an analytical driver kind of an activity. So it's pretty well positioned as it is right now. Activity number 6 is plotting quite far up grid now. It would be very solidly in power stress. Let's take a look at what that activity is. That is defining the job that needs to be done for my target market. And so she can figure out who they are. Now this is about figuring out what it is they really want, need, desire. So this is a very interesting kind of a puzzle. But at least you're right in that intention engagement line. So This tells me you're asking people what they want. You really are doing the exploration. But I would imagine that the task of defining the job that needs to be done for my target market also involves a strong analytical element to it as well. And when you're plotting, where you're plotting right now around that, there is no analytical energy. In fact, I'll go ahead and switch the background since we started talking about this before the class began. Um, you are really the expressive driver, driven expressive. So you want to move it forward, but you want to do it with enthusiasm, excitement, passion, all that sort of a thing. And that's really great if I was trying to sell the job to my target market, but I'm just defining the job that needs to be done. So that activity, we're probably going to want to move into a direction where there's some analytical energy. I'll predict it too belongs here as the analytical driver. Let's see, you guys are all doing fine. Deep thinking. Yep, yep, yep. All right, good. Now, when it comes to activities number 7 and 8, now on this layer, you see that's where the expressive driver, analytical driver is. If I drew in the lines, it's actually in power. In fact, we might as well get used to swapping out backgrounds. You guys can do this whenever you want. Let's go to those different response states. You can see that 7 and 8 are in the northern part of power, very close to power stress. Let's briefly take a look at what those activities are and see if that's a pretty good place to be. So 7 and 8, start writing copy for the new website and start collecting blog articles. So again, we're writing copy, we're collecting blog articles. Right now, where you're plotting around this, you are in power, so you're open, gathering information, looking at options, etc. The energies we're looking at here are more of the expressive and amiable kinds of energy, and so you want to move it forward, but you want to have fun doing it. You want to make sure that you're coming at it from that also that amiable, caring sort of part as well. And that's really great, but you could end up with mountains and mountains of articles that way. So let's say I started saying, like, where on the grid are we going to do the best job of writing copy for the new website? Is the best writing dictated by a driver energy, an expressive energy, an amiable energy, or an analytical energy? Now, it's kind of a trick question, but I'm just kind of curious to have you guys weigh in on this. Do you believe that the best primary energy, the energy that is governing this activity, when it comes to writing copy for the website, do you think you would want to be ruled by a driver energy, an expressive energy, an amiable energy, or an analytical energy? Which one would you guys pick? Which should run the game when it comes to writing something? Okay. And what the answer that I'm getting from people is that there's an analytical energy that really comes into play. Now, keep in mind that if I'm an expressive writer, I could be very inspirational. I could be, painting that picture of all the excitement, all the enthusiasm, all that positive sort of stuff. By the way, I can also inspire you in a negative direction. I could be painting a vision of great fear and pain and, awful outcomes and all that sort of a thing. That's the expressive energy when it's writing. If you wanted to write something that was really just about awakening feelings inside of people, perhaps an expressive driver energy would serve you well there. But if you're trying to prove that there is value in what you're doing, you're trying to write content, to write copy, that will move the person forward in choosing to hire you and make thorough use of your services. Now we need to make sure that we are building a case, that the copy that we're writing is proving a point. It is, pardon me, it is describing a real situation, helping them to recognize perhaps the early warning signs or symptoms that they're in this situation, let them know what the ramifications are of the situation is. I mean, give them some details about what it costs if they don't do X, or what the fallout rate is if they fail to do blah, blah, blah. I mean, if there's some good metrics, some good statistics to build your case, that's the analytical driver energy kicking into play. And so if that's the kind of copy you're talking about, then I'm going to suggest the analytical driver. A driven driver can also write copy, but they're just going to tell you in no uncertain terms and in very few words exactly what you should do. And they aren't selling you on it. They aren't trying to encourage you to do it. They're just telling you, shooting you right between the eyes with exactly what it is that they believe you should be doing. So as I'm thinking about the kind of writing you probably would do on a website, it's probably going to be more of that analytical driver energy to build the case and prove the value, or it could be the expressive driver energy that's all about that. Now, if you were writing a page about service and support, that amiable driver energy is always thinking about others and always thinking about how to be of greater service, etc. So we could write from any of these energies, but I'm going to believe it's the analytical driver energy is where we're going to be looking for. So in a couple of minutes, we'll start talking about moving around the change grid for that particular activity. We're going to want to move you from where you are, which is right now. Let me go ahead and change this background image again to the energies. It's becoming my favorite layer. We want to move you from, thank you, updating. Right now, you are on that border between the expressive driver and the amiable driver. Lots of caring, lots of enthusiasm. We're thinking an analytical driver. To move you there, we're going to need to boost your perceived ability by a few points, and the level of challenge will probably come down naturally. If we're going to boost your ability by 4 points, I promise you, your perceived level of challenge is going to go down just because you have that increased knowledge, skill, experience, insight, etc. Okay, so let's take a look at another activity here. Let's see what's going on with activity number 16. Number 16, right now, you're plotting between expressive driver and driven driver. So again, the driver energy is predominant, and so we're moving something forward. And you're on that border between trying to jazz somebody into doing it and trying to push somebody into doing it. So jazz, push, jazz, push. So inspire them and force them, inspire and force. And so you're right that in between spot about how this is being done. Let's take a look at what activity number 16 is and see if that resonates. Defining the product versus needs strategy for my target market. Isn't that interesting? It's interesting that when I'm trying to define the set of products and services that I might want to offer my clients, sometimes I do want to say, hey, these are very positive, uplifting, purposeful, beneficial. It'll take you to a whole new level. That's more the expressive driver stuff. And other times I might be saying to them, based on the situation you're in right now, this is what you need. This product was put together to satisfy your need, to solve your problem. And so maybe being in the middle there is okay. So in fact, Christine, you got a couple of active lines right now. I don't quite know if I can unmute you, but I'm going to try again. Let me try this. Christine, are you there?
Can you hear me?
Yes. Hi, Christine. How are you?
I've had to resort to looking at doing this on my iPad because you died in the middle of trying to talk to you.
Well, at least the technology has come along with it. So, how are things in England? I'll be there in a couple of weeks.
Oh, I'm looking forward to meeting you. It's nice and wet for you.
Well, wonderful. Well, a little preview. Everyone just tolerate their little side commentary. I arrive Monday, the 13th of May, so 2 weeks from Monday, and I'm totally free on Tuesday, the 14th. My project actually is no, sorry, scratch that. I leave on the 13th. I arrive on Tuesday, the 14th in the morning. So I've got the afternoon on the 14th, and I've got all day on the 15th. Wait, is that right?
Will you not be jet lagged?
Oh, no, no, no. You know me. I'm just going to jump right into London time. So point is that Tuesday or Wednesday would be really great if you want to, rendezvous
Okay,
somewhere in London for a little.
I will alert Linda to the arrangement.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, so now, okay, so we just talked about this idea about number 16, and we talked about writing that copy. Did that resonate with you?
Yes, I am stressed because of the conflict with time. Time out of I'm a doer. I like to do things, so I find that stressful because I'm going to have to focus on one thing and get it done, and there's a timeline, attached to it. So that's probably what you're seeing there.
Excellent. All right. Well, and again, this idea about coming up with your product offerings, you're on this border between getting them jazzed about what you have to offer and telling them what they really, really need. And I know
Yeah,
you well enough to know that you can lean in either one of those directions as the case requires.
I
So,
think also that's demonstrating an element of um, uncertainty for me, and that's where I'm sitting on the fence. I'm
mhm.
I'm not certain what those are. I have a set of products, and although I'm not supposed to shoehorn the customer into what I have, and it's about giving what the customer it needs, there's a financial implications to doing that, and I have to find that line. So it's uncertainty.
Well, right. Well, plus keep in mind that while there's two different philosophies about product development. The one is that it should be driven by the customer, and I get that. So, do we want to try to push them into whatever little product bucket that you have? But there's also a case to be made for being a specialist. And then especially saying, like, I have very carefully developed this product. It is designed for people in the following situations. So I think you're a little bit of both of those. And so this
Yeah,
might actually be a good place for you to figure all that out. Um,
yeah,
Ultimately, though, anytime we even start using the word or thinking the thought, figure something out, there's an analytical element to that.
yes.
So
Uh,
yeah, so perhaps when I see you in London, we can strategize that a little bit.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so with that, any questions you have about your grid, Christine, that you want to go over on the call?
This is all about the relaunch of DC of my company. New, not changing the branding per se, but I've been circling the desert like the nation of Israel in the olden days, and I've now I've now found the gate to the promised land. And in order to do that, I have to come up with some key things to
Hmm.
meet my target market. I'm flying to Scotland in 21st of May to give a workshop, and I need the surrounding marketing elements to be in
Right.
place for congruity's sake. So that's what this is all about. And I'm going
Excellent.
forward a little bit more confident about what it is I'm offering and who I'm offering it to and why.
Excellent, excellent. Well, we've got lots to talk about then. So I like the grid. Overall, I think you certainly, you know what your grid says. You've got a lot of very positive energy around it, but we want to move you from this intention and engagement thing more into that solid engagement and execution spot. So,
Yeah.
so that's it. Okay, so with that, I'll go ahead and mute you again. Just feel free to type me a question, and I'll talk to you again soon. All right. So, for everyone else on the call, do you have any questions, comments about the grid that you're looking at? Has this been useful to you in understanding the basics? I'll wait for some feedback there. I'm going to change the background back to the main one. Yep. So power, stress, etc. Okay. All right. Well, then it's time to talk about how to move someone around on the change grid. Now, when we are keeping things as basic can be, we would say to you, all you need to understand is there are 5 levels of tension. And all you need to understand is how to raise or lower that level of tension. So I would say to you, all right now, Christine is up in power stress about a writing kind of activity. We want to lower her down into power. And so we do a little bit of downgrid maneuvers. Or we've got some of these things that are kind of down in apathy. And to get them done sooner, we need to move the tension up a little bit. So if you want to keep this as basic can be, all you have to do is ask yourself, is this level of tension useful to me right now? And if it is, great. But if it's not, what level of tension would be more useful? And how do I move someone to, or move myself to that particular level of tension? Now, as I said, we're a bit ahead of schedule. And so I started showing you some other layers of the change grid. Those other layers of the change grid help you get more subtleties, more nuances kind of factored into your interpretation. And so you see that power is a very big spot. And even though I might be in power, I might not want to be that expressive. 1 second, I'll just go ahead and switch this out. So again, watch the layers. So I might not want to be that expressive, amiable driver. I need to move to analytical driver. Well, technically, both of those locations are still in power, but one is more upgrid, one is more downgrid. So as we move further and further downgrid, the analytical energies start creeping in, upgrid the expressive energies. And so what I'd like to do is go ahead and teach you all 4 sets of change grid maneuvers on today's call. And if it's a bit much for some of you, I don't think it will be, but if it is, I'll just apologize in advance and say just stick with upgrade and downgrade maneuvers and you'll be just fine. In fact, as we go around the world teaching this program to managers and supervisors, team leaders, we only talk about 5 levels of tension. We never even make reference to there being other layers of the change grid. And we only talk about upgrade and downgrade maneuvers. And that alone is enough to fill a half day or even a full day program. So we don't want to overwhelm anyone But we do want to make sure that you have enough of a command of what you are learning that you can apply it with great value to your own life. So these other layers do exist. You can swap out the backgrounds whenever you want. So I do want to take some opportunity to acquaint you with what these layers are really all about. All right, so with that, let's get into how we go about moving people around on the grid. And we'll come back to Christine's grid and Joanne's grid to talk about how this would actually apply. So back to the PowerPoint presentation for just a second. Now you do have a workbook, and on the workbook you do have a spot where you could write these upgrid and downgrid maneuvers in. I will give you the in and out, so you'll just have to kind of jot them in some spare space there, but here goes. Okay, so we're going to begin with downgrid maneuvers. Downgrid maneuvers are all about lowering tension. So without understanding the specific downgrid maneuvers that we use, I want you all to understand, embrace, celebrate the fact that you are all already highly skilled tension managers. Over the course of your lifetime, you have learned deliberately or just instinctively about these levels of tension, and you've learned how to deal with those levels of tension. You may never have used these labels, but you've been doing this process. So if I said to a large audience, you've got a friend, a family member, a colleague, a coworker who's way up in stress, they're in a panic sort of a situation. They know they need to do something, but they don't know what to do. Their emotions are distorting their reality. Their reasoning abilities are ruled by those emotions, and they're running out of what few resources they have left. What kinds of things would we do to lower their level of tension? So, what kinds of things do we just do when one of the people we care about is in a very stressful kind of a situation? Now, you guys are welcome to type me some ideas you have there, but I promise you, you're going to come up with the same sorts of things that every audience has come up with over these 30 plus years now. And so, these are the kinds of things that we do. In fact, oh, you guys are sharing some, so let me go ahead and share some of these. We provide people with reassurance. We physically remove them from the stressful environment, get them a breath of fresh air, not a breath of fresh air. We soothe them physically, so we might comfort them, pat them on the shoulder, give them a hug, give them a shoulder to cry on. We let them express whatever it is they've got going on. So if they're angry, great, be angry, just get it out. We take them to the top of a mountain and let them scream. Or we give them punching bags and say, here, take out your aggression. We administer drugs and alcohol. There's all sorts of things that we do that will effectively lower someone's level of tension. Yeah, so Joanne's talking there, support them in meditating, something to help them get into this more balanced place of possibilities. Point is that there are many, many, many things, countless things that we could do that would lower someone's level of tension. Unfortunately, a great many of the things that I mentioned would be considered inappropriate, perhaps illegal in a business setting, and so those get frowned upon. Even though they would be inappropriate, perhaps even illegal, they would still be effective. So I don't want you guys to get yourself in any sort of trouble. And so what we've done is said, let's take away all those that might cause us issues and instead focus on what are the things that we could do to lower someone's level of tension in a professional sort of an interaction. Now, the reason why I wanted to still talk about some of those things that are more naturally done is because we're talking about personal change management. We're talking about mastering personal change. You're welcome to do anything that you think would help you deal with whatever that stress happens to be. And so if you want to pour yourself a glass of wine, you pour yourself a glass of wine. But in a business professional setting, that's frowned upon, perhaps forbidden in a lot of different companies that we've certainly worked with around the planet. So what are these things that we can do inside of that professional relationship that would effectively lower the person's level of tension? Well, now we get things far more limited. There are four categories of things that we can do to lower someone's level of tension and stay on that professional side of things. We can normalize, simplify, restore resources, and add resources. So let's explore each one of those in just a little bit of detail, and you can see what I'm talking about. So first one, normalizing. If you're way up in stress, you probably feel like the situation you're in is bizarre, unfortunate, like you're some sort of a freak that this is happening to you. Well, what happens to your level of tension the moment you realize that the situation is actually quite normal? It's actually quite predictable. A good example of this is when people are given a diagnosis, a medical diagnosis, that they have an illness. And the diagnosis is one that perhaps no one would ever want to hear. So it moves them way up into stress. Well, part of the language that's mulling around their head is that they're alone. This is happening to them. This is why the medical community and the social services community wants to get this person connected to support groups and things like that as quickly as possible. Just knowing that there are other people who have experienced what you are experiencing, who have gone through what you're going through, and maybe even came out on the other side just as happy and healthy and content as you could ever hope to be, maybe this is all it takes to move you out of stress and down into power stress or power, where you're being a little bit more logical and a little bit more gaining a little bit more of control around the situation. So sometimes all we have to do to get someone out of that stress response is to let them know this is not as unusual as you might think. This is actually predictable, normal, etc. So we can normalize. That'll lower tension. Um, Now, again, for self application, whenever you're feeling stressed out or whatever, just stop and ask yourself, what is this all about? Do I think I'm the only one that's ever gone through this? Is there some that have gone before me that I can learn from, that I can tap into? These kinds of things are what we're talking about for normalizing. We then simplify. So very often when people are up in stress, it's because they're looking at that situation from a very macro kind of perspective. And so it's very, very big. Well, a very big task feels far more overwhelming than that same task broken down into some more doable steps. So anytime we do something to simplify what we're going through, so put together a strategy, etc., then the level of tension comes down. So for example, as I mentioned on Tuesday's call, we are in the process of evaluating a variety of new locations for our business. And those locations are international. And so every place you pick is going to have some advantages and it's going to have some disadvantages. It's going to have some things that are going to make it easier and some things that are going to make it more complex. And so, we're basically creating Gantt charts about this whole kind of move. So anything we can do to simplify it. So we've been seeking out things like, uh, you know, how to move your business to, and then there's the name of the country or whatever. And so, there's lots has come before us that is this that'll help us to simplify this overall process. The next thing is about restoring resources. Very often, when people are too far up grid, they forget about all the resources they already have around them, people that could actually be of service to them, experiences they've actually had, real tools, real resources, physical resources that they could deploy in this particular thing. So sometimes we just need to remind people what it is that they're going to need. And so, for example, again, with this big move, well, we've moved before and we've done things like, cleaned out all the stuff you don't really need anymore. And we've done plenty of, putting stuff up on eBay and deciding what's worth shipping and what's worth donating and all that sort of a thing. So it's not like we don't have a great deal of experience around these things that are going to be involved. So, but as we start to feel out of sorts, it really is about restoring these resources that will also help us to move down grid. And then the last point on this is about adding resources. Maybe the reason why you're upgrid is because you don't have the resources you need. You don't have the knowledge, the skill, the experience, the time, the money, the whatever it is that you need in order to get this situation to move in the direction you want it to move. So sometimes we have to get out there and find those things, acquire those things, and plug those things into action. So again, sticking with our situation, situation, I found out that there has been many a book written about relocating to this place versus that place, and there's all kinds of resources. And so I'm going like, wow, now I've got so many to choose from: blogs and books and expat kind of organizations, all sorts of things. And really, although I'm sharing this with you guys about moving the company, the truth is that our community members and all of our certified professionals will not know that it's even happened. It'll be totally transparent to them because, again, right now, none of you know where I'm sitting. Am I in the United States? Am I in Europe? Where is T right now? So, where in the world is Carmen Sandiego? No, just where in the world is T? I can do this from any place on the planet, and none of our instructors would even know, and I imagine wouldn't even care. Of course, if we move someplace exotic and fantastic, maybe they'll be even more interested in coming to our retreats. So we'll see about that. All right, point is that there are several things that we can easily do in the confines of professional behavior that will lower someone's level of tension. So normalize, simplify, restore resources, and add resources. You don't need to do all of them. Maybe just one of them is all that it takes to lower your tension to where you want to go. Maybe you need a little combination. There's no particular order to them. It's just saying like these are the four categories, blend them, use them in whatever way is going to produce the desired outcome you seek. Now, there is a warning, though, about downgrade maneuvers, and that is that if you're not careful, you can end up overshooting your destination. What I mean by that is this: if you're up in stress about something, and again, let's just go to Christine's grid for just a second. Activity number two, way up there. Yeah, right on the border of stress, barely up there in stress. Activity number two, how to transfer the domain names. So now I have to ask myself two questions. Number one is this the natural place on the change grid for that activity to be well performed? The answer is no. So no one up in stress is going to do a great job of transferring their domain. Um, an interesting question there, Christine. She says, "What if you do nothing?" Well, if we do nothing, then my level of tension is either going to go up as external factors continue to impose themselves on my reality, or I'm going to end up moving down grid where I become less and less interested in doing it. So, for example, we have always known that at a certain point in our life, we want to have an adventure. We continue want to run our business until our dying day because it's just who we are. It's what we do. And so this isn't about retiring from the work we're doing. We just like to change the view out the window. And so, because we've had the opportunity to see so much of the world, I can't tell you that how many places I could probably be perfectly content living. There's lots of fantastic places all over this planet, and my big fear is that if I do nothing, I'm going to end up moving further down grid and simply become complacent and end up being here where I am, which isn't bad at all, year after year for the rest of my life. And sooner or later, I'm going to go like, I don't even have the energy to move in one of these things. So we kind of feel like this is our opportunity. This is the best time for us to be doing anything like that. So that's it. If I do nothing, I'm either going to end up in stress, and I don't want that, or I'm going to end up down in apathy, and I'm not going to want that in the long run either. Now, again, going back to Christine's activity here, this one about getting the domain changed, she's way up grid. Well, what level of tension would really support her best? Let me change the background image so we can just focus on these levels of tension. All right, again, this is about finding the best place to host, transfer your domain name. Yeah, it is just a procedural thing. So how to do it? Well, what level of tension would support me best in figuring out how to transfer a domain name? Stress? No. Apathy? No. So we're getting closer. Power stress? So that's better. It's got a sense of urgency. Power would really support me in looking at the options, considering the alternatives, figuring out what really is best. Power apathy is me really finding somebody else to do it. I don't think I'm ready to delegate that or just toss it to somebody. So I think I need to be in power stress or power. Now, which of those you want to choose, Christine, is really based on how much you already know. If you already know about the options, maybe power stress is fine because you've already chosen one or you can rule some out. But if you really need to shop around and really understand the different options to do, maybe moving down to power. Regardless, we need to move you from stress down grid. Now, how many of those maneuvers I do and how much detail I attach to each one of them is going to dictate how far I'm going to go down. So maybe I just need a little bit of restoring a resource or a little adding of a resource, and you'll be right where you need to be. In fact, if I just told you, just go fill out this form, it's done here, I'll send you the link. Well, that could be all you need. What I've just done is added a resource, and that was enough to move you out of stress and into power stress. If I'm not careful, though, I might say to you, oh, there's a lot more to it. Let me send you articles galore about that. Let me put you in touch with all these different kinds of suggestions and tell you about all the different philosophies. I could end up moving you from stress down to power, stress through power, down to power apathy, and ultimately put you way down in apathy because it's just like, why am I bothered doing this or whatever. So, we have to be really careful that we don't do too many of these maneuvers. What stops you from doing that is knowing where's the destination. So if she's up in stress and we want to be in power stress, very short trip, just a little bit of a downgrade maneuver would produce that desired outcome. If it's further, got to do a little bit more. Okay, questions, thoughts about the thing. Now, Christina's pointing out the best place for that activity to be would be the analytical driver. No argument with me. That is the exact place you want to go. I still need to move you down grid into power, and then I'm also going to want to move you out grid. So we'll talk about that combination maneuver, down grid and out grid, to move to where you're really talking about being. Okay, let's finish up our down grid maneuvers. Okay, any questions, comments about downgrade maneuvers? Does this seem easy enough? Easy enough, pardon me. Mm. I let you guys eat lunch. I really shouldn't do that because then I've got to talk. So, okay, let's talk then about upgrade maneuvers. How do we go about raising someone's level of tension, raising our own for that matter? Now, again, I can say this to all of you with great certainty. You are all already highly skilled tension managers. You know how to raise someone's level of tension. You probably even know how to raise your own. You're also surrounded by people who know how to raise your level of tension. I'm sure you've been upset by more than one person over the course of your lifetime. So, somehow or another, they knew how to push the buttons, pull the strings, and you ended up having a much more upgrade reaction to whatever the situation happened to have been. So now, again, if I said, all right, oh, audience members, tell me all the things you could think of that would raise someone's level of tension. So let's say you got a friend, a family member, a colleague, a coworker who is sitting deep, deep, deep down in apathy. They have become one with the sofa where they are doing nothing but watching the TV, playing video games, and, noshing on whatever's available in the fridge. So this is their reality. We want them to get off that sofa, go out there, get engaged with some sort of activity. Find a purpose, find a mission, find a job. Do something. Get out of out of apathy. So, what kinds of things do we do to raise someone's level of tension? Well, you guys can type some answers to me if you feel so inclined, but I'll tell you, they're probably just going to be reinforcements of what we've learned over all these years. People say things like, well, maybe you need to help the person see what's in it for them to get off that couch, to get out of apathy. Maybe we need to let them see the positive outcomes, get them to set a goal, let them have a new vision, a purpose, a mission. That would move their tension upgrade. Yeah, that's very, very nice. Other people say, well, if I yell at them loud enough, long enough, they'll get off their butt and go do something. Or if I threaten them, or if I take away something they really like, or give them some punishment they don't want, maybe I should just throw the sofa away, set the sofa on fire. Maybe I'll sell the TV set, sell the Xbox. And so, there's all kinds of things that people do. I could pull a weapon on you, and your level of tension will go up. Will those things, are they effective? Yes, they're all effective. Are they, are they appropriate? No, the truth is a great many of those things would be inappropriate, perhaps illegal in a business setting. So what can I do in order to make this all happen? So now our choices again are considerably limited. Let's see, I think I got a question coming in here. Yeah, so we're going to need to set a greater challenge. I like that. Paint an ugly picture of their future. So this is what happens if you don't do it. This is what happens if it does. So maybe I'm going to give you a positive outcome to reach for. Maybe I'm going to give you a negative outcome to avoid. But either way, those would both make tension go up. So that's good. So what can we do? These are the four things that we can do to raise someone's level of productive tension and stay inside of that professional sort of frame. So we can increase the standards against which we're measuring that performance. So, if we are doing pretty well, maybe we just need to raise the bar. So, whether we want to be making more money or we want to be making or working with more interesting clients or more interesting projects, we can always increase the standard against which we are measuring whatever that performance happens to be. The second thing that we could do is to change the task in some slight or profound way. So, for example, many of you are executive coaches. You've certainly worked with your fair share of executives who have become very accomplished. They have great things to point to. In fact, I talked about this on Tuesday. They're down in apathy. Their ability is extremely high. The challenge is gone. They conquered all the challenge long, long ago. And there they sit down in apathy, having mastered the situation they're currently in. And they start to feel trapped in a velvet prison. And by that, as I explained on Tuesday, the person feels discontent even though they're surrounded by everything that other people would say, that'd be great, you got a great job, you're making great money, you've got great recognition, wow, you've got the world on a platter, the world is your oyster, but that person's kind of going like, oh, no, I shouldn't be complaining, but I feel underutilized, I'm bored, I don't know what to do next, I'm going crazy because I have no reason to get out of bed and go do anything. Well, when someone is that far down grid that now they're becoming depressed around it, you got to believe it's time to change the task in some slight or profound way. In that particular scenario, it might be more on the profound end of things, saying like, well, let's find a new opportunity for you to apply all that entrepreneurial energy. You need a new mission, a new vision, a new purpose. We can change it in a very dramatic kind of way. But we also change things in a very subtle way, and this, I think, is going to connect perhaps a bit more with personal change management. So, how many of you have ever been getting ready to go off on holiday, off on a vacation, but there's a whole list of things you got to get done before you leave? Isn't it amazing how many of those things you can get done as the time frame gets tighter and tighter? We refer to that as playing beat the clock. So these activities that you probably could have taken care of long in advance, they were too far down grid. They didn't get any of your attention. They didn't demand any attention. So nothing really changed. But now the deadline is getting closer and closer. You're packing your bags. You're ready to go. And you got this pile of stuff to get done. Isn't it amazing how you can get something done when you change the task, even in a slight way? See, the way the task changed is that now the task is no longer get these things done. It's get these things done so I can leave on vacation with peace of mind. So get the idea, even a slight change. If you've ever been in a sales environment, sales contests represent slight changes to the task. So yeah, they still have to go out and sell stuff, but now their thoughts aren't so much about selling the stuff as much as it's winning the contest. So the work is still the work, but that changed in some slight way that kind of changed the frame around it, and now you're a little bit more energized around that. A third thing we can do to increase tension is to awaken emotions. Now, on your reference guide, you see the core emotions for each of the levels of tension. And so, if I want to move someone to a particular level of tension, I just need to ask myself, what is the core emotions or what are the core emotions of that level of tension? And then what can we do to awaken that emotion? So, for example, if I've got someone who's down in apathy and I want them to move up into power where they feel a little bit more in control, they're out there actually doing things, being more engaged, I need to say, well, what are the emotions of power? The emotions of power are pride and confidence. Those are the two main ones. So, pardon me. What can I do to awaken feelings of pride and confidence in these individuals? Now, a good example of this in action goes back to 9/11. So, prior to 9/11, when it came to matters of security inside of our own national borders, the average American was down in apathy. There had really never been a foreign war fought on our soil since we became a country. There's been a civil war, of course, but as far as there being any kind of an international conflict on our land, it simply hasn't happened. And so the Americans were very much down in apathy when it came to matters of their personal national security. Well, along came 9/11. And suddenly we've got terrorist attacks and planes slamming into the World Trade Center and everything that followed that. Obviously that kind of shook people out of their complacency. Now we have actually not been threatened on our own land. We've actually been attacked. And we've been attacked in a way that does not comply with the rules of war. And so it really, really disturbed people. Now, of course, the first thing that happens is that the population skyrocketed from apathy. Everyone went up into stress, and everyone became very angry, and everyone wanted to like get back. So all that revenge, that's all happening. Well, in the long run, we have to recognize that these kinds of things are happening all over the planet right now while we speak. Something horrible is happening to some innocent person someplace on this planet. So that's always going to be just part of what makes humans the mess that humans can be, but it also allows us to have opportunities to show humans in their best light too. But it just is what it is. In the long run, though, we go like, wait, where do we really need our population to be in order to emerge from this situation in the most positive way possible? That can't happen if we're down in apathy, and it can't happen if we're up in stress. So instead, and I don't think they did this in a calculated way, thinking about tension management, but nevertheless, they came to the same conclusion. We need people to feel that very much in control. This event made everyone feel out of control. We need them to feel in control again. We need them to recognize, though, that something has changed and it has changed forever. And so we need to make sure that we're back on track. We're back doing what needs to be done. And so it was time then for the powers that be to start to focus on confidence and pride and all that goes along. So suddenly, I know several of you on the call aren't in the United States and aren't from the U.S., but I have to imagine that the same dynamic plays out for you in perhaps a different set of circumstances, or you've also been affected by this big event. But nevertheless. We suddenly started noticing that the governments, local and statewide and federal, we were seeing a lot more flags being flown. We were passing out little flag lapel pins, all this sort of stuff to rekindle that patriotism, that pride. There were things being put up about these colors don't run. So they were doing whatever they could do to say that anything that is wrong can be fixed by everything that is right. And we need to make sure that we have that feeling of pride and confidence, that sense of mission and purpose and a vision for something that's really good. So hopefully you guys can hear as we've gone through this, what they were actually trying to do was move us into power. Now, whether we were in apathy and move us up into power, up in stress, and they moved us down into power, this is still what was going on. Ideally, we hope they would have done that by getting us out of apathy. But obviously, if it had already skyrocketed us up into stress, then those downgrade maneuvers would have probably been played immediately as well. So normalize it, simplify it, add resources, restore resources, trying to give people some peace of mind in that moment. Another example of this has to do with the core emotion of power stress. If you look at your reference guide, the core emotion for power stress is lust. Lust is the wanting of something. This is where desire lives. I want it, whether I'm wanting to acquire a particular object. I want the boat, I want the car, I want the little thing for my collection, whatever it is. I want it. Or maybe in my business setting, I want to have that revenue stream. I want to have that particular client. I want to have that kind of opportunity. This emotion of desire, lust, appears in power stress. And so if I've got someone who's down in apathy and they're very complacent and ambivalent and tired and bored and depressed, I need to get them to want something again, to get back into that, business of living. And so maybe saying like, what do you really want? Why is that so important to you? These questions and the answers that arise from them would be effective in moving someone up there into power stress. So I can awaken emotions. The fourth thing that I can do is boost accountability for a great many things. In fact, the further downgrid something plots, the more likely accountability is to be part of the solution. It's just the way that it is. The downgrid area, the change grid, does get occupied by a lot of seemingly minor tasks, menial activities that may be mission critical, but they just don't really get my attention. So, but sooner or later, I got to get them done. Well, how am I going to make myself do things that my truth is I really would love to not have to do? But if there's no one else to give them to, I'm stuck with it. So this is where accountability comes into play. So now we come along and say, we have a metric. We need to have X done by a particular date. We need to get this decision, this action taken by this date, this time, within this budget, whatever it is. And then someone has to check in frequently enough to make sure that you're on track for doing that. And whoever is holding you accountable has to be someone that you don't want to disappoint, because if they're going to let you off the hook, you're going to let yourself off the hook, and accountability is going to fail. And so for accountability to work, there really has to be this standard you're trying to accomplish. There has to be a reason why you're doing it, so a meaningful reward. There has to be a consequence if you don't do it, and someone's got to enforce it. So those are the four required elements for an accountability formula to actually work. So got to have a performance standard. We have to have rewards. We have to have consequences. We have to have an enforcer. And so boosting accountability is going to require all those things. Just setting a deadline isn't going to change a thing if no one's going to hold you to that deadline. So boosting accountability can also move someone up grid. Now, like the case was with downgrid maneuvers, before you start to do this, you have to know, where is this person on the grid and where am I trying to move them to? And then I can use just the right combination. So let's go back to Christine's grid for just a second. She's got a bunch of things down there in apathy. Let's see if we can find one that would benefit from moving further up grid. So we got 3, 4, 17, 19. Let's look at those. Purchasing a WordPress theme. Um, yeah. Number 4, sending logos. Number 17, updating my business cards. And number 19, updating my 5-second pitch. Okay, all of those are really rather minor tasks size-wise, as she's indicated here, yet they're all very important things. Some of them I may very well get done just because, sooner or later I'm going to get these things done. But if I want to become a little bit more conscientious about it, a little more deliberate, I'm going to believe that that 5-second elevator pitch is something that we really want to think about, something we really want to calculate and formulate. While I'm down in apathy, even though the analytical energy is so strong down there, so I know what to say, I can come up with all kinds of things to say, I understand it. I don't have any sense of urgency down there, so it may never get done. So when I see the verb here, the verb is update, right? Is that for number 19? Update my 5-second pitch, and so that's implying there is a certain set of urgency. There is a type metric. It's 5 seconds. So what level of tension would support me best in revisiting and rebuilding my 5-second pitch? You think it's going to work while we're down in apathy? No. Up in stress? Power apathy, I'd want to hire someone else to do it for me. If I'm going to do this, this too needs to be moved into power. And so, how am I going to get Christine to do the best job on that update? I'm going to apply some of these upgrade maneuvers. So again, we're looking at activity number 19, plotting down here in apathy. I'd like it to be anywhere in power to keep things simple. So just upgrade maneuvers alone would do that. So I need to increase the standards against which we're measuring the performance. So right now the standard just seems to be it has to fit into 5 seconds. Maybe we want to say that it has to be as compelling as possible in as few words as possible. So now I've just raised the standard a little bit. Maybe I change the task, that it really isn't about finishing this little 5-second pitch. What it really is about connecting with people in a profound way, faster than I've done it before. And so I could do that. I could awaken the emotions. I could say, Christine, when it comes to this pitch, are you talking about the mission, the vision, the purpose? Or are you just, introducing yourself and saying, hi, I do X? So maybe we need to change the task a little bit and awaken those emotions that say, we want that pride, we want that confidence, we want you to have that vision, that mission, that the vision, the mission, the purpose, so that people can know that you are of passion and can feel the passion that you're feeling around it, even though it's only 5 seconds. So now we're awakening those emotions. I know you can do it. We're waiting for you to get it done. And then we put in some little accountability. I'll be seeing you in London uh, 2 weeks from Wednesday. So I'd like to hear it in the first 5 seconds of seeing you. So we'll greet. I want to hear your pitch. So these are the things we can do. Now again, I'm not trying to move Christine all the way up into stress. So I don't want to put so many of these upgrade maneuvers in place that it suddenly feels like too much pressure, too overwhelming. That's not the goal. The goal is to just deliver enough of that upgrade maneuver stuff that you end up in power. That's all that it really takes. So I'm getting some comments here. Yeah, so it's about setting the challenge. Yep, sounds like a challenge. That's all we're trying to do. Obviously, you have a high level of ability to do it. You gave it an 11. So if I want to move you, it's going to be all about working with that challenge perception. How do I make it more challenging? How do I make it more challenging? Okay, so those are the upgrade maneuvers. Now, we do have some time left, so with your indulgence, I'd like to briefly acquaint you guys with in-grid and out-grid maneuvers, and then we'll be done. So again, we've been talking about these different energies. Technically, to write the best 5-second pitch possible, the most powerful pitch there is, I'm going to ask you guys to tell me what the energies would be. Do you believe that the most powerful pitch is going to be written by a driver, an amiable, an analytical, or an expressive? So, what should the primary energy be when it comes to writing a 5-second pitch? And I'm going to add a little bit to it. I just don't want to write it and have it be accurate. We want it to be compelling. So the analytical energy might do a great job of figuring out what needs to be said. The analytical energy knows all the facts and figures and all that, but that doesn't mean they're going to craft a statement that's going to be exciting and compelling and involving and all that sort of stuff. It's just going to be clinically correct. So I don't think the analytical energy should rule the day when it comes to writing for impact. So we were thinking, so I've got a couple of suggestions here. The expressive energy would be great. The expressive amiable energy could be interesting to look at as well. Very interesting combination. And one of you is saying that you would go with either an expressive driver or an analytical driver. Very interesting. Okay, so let's kind of talk that through. Generally speaking, when it comes to a business related activity, the purpose behind that business related activity is going to be pretty consistent. So if I said, Christine, why do you want a 5-second pitch? Why do you want that? What's the point of having it? Period. Well, I'm sure, Christine, you can chime in if I'm incorrect on this. I'm sure Christine would say, "Well, because I want to build my business, I want to get people's attention, I want to engage them in some meaningful dialogue." So the purpose behind this activity is really all about to drive something, to move something forward, to advance something. And so I'm going to choose the driver energy as the primary energy, because that way I know that what the intention is. The intention behind this is to advance, it is to move forward. If the analytical energy is in charge, the analytical energy just says, as long as it's accurate and complete and I meet the requirements of the task, I'm done. I did it. The expressive energy is likely to say something very inspirational, but the expressive energy really doesn't understand time constraints. And so, if I wanted to actually stay within this little 5-second structure, I really don't know that the expressive energy is all that good at containing itself. It wants to express, it wants to let go. And so, I'm going to say I want that driver energy to be the primary energy. Now, I might make the case that that if it's a secondary energy, maybe we'd still make something happen. But I want to illustrate the point if that's the choice you're making. In fact, let me go ahead and change this background image to the energies. I've been talking. Yeah, good, good, good. All right, so um, I want the driver now. What kind of driver do you think is going to do the best job of crafting a high impact 5-second pitch? Do you want the analytical driver, the driven driver, the expressive driver, the amiable driver when it comes to crafting this pitch? Now, you just heard me emphasize the word crafting because that could be different than delivering the pitch. So when it comes to crafting the pitch, what do you guys vote for? What kind of energy should be secondary? So I know it's driver energy because we're trying to make something happen, but will the driver, the driven driver, the expressive driver, the amiable driver, or the analytical driver do the best job of crafting high impact pitch? Who's best at crafting these things? All right, the analytical driver, because it's about figuring out, I only have 5 seconds. What is it that I need to say? How do I need to say it so that it will work? Now, now that I've crafted it, the question becomes, what about when it comes time to deliver it? I want this message delivered. Now, why do I want this message delivered? And by the way, that's not an activity that's currently on her list. And so what you could certainly do is just click here. Let's add an activity. Let's say the activity is delivering my, oops, sorry, I can't type and talk and type at the same time. Someone did a research project about that to prove out why, but delivering my 5-second pitch. So I'm going to say it's a small task because it's 5 seconds. How big could it possibly be? And I'm going to believe it's super important because you're trying to get business out of it. So right now, Christine, tell me, how do you rate your ability to deliver that 5-second pitch in an effective way? And you can just go ahead and type me your answer there. How do you rate your ability to deliver that 5-second pitch in an impactful kind of way? And of course, how challenging do you think it is to do that? All right. So she's given her ability a 10. And how about the challenge part? How challenging do you think it's going to be? Delivering this impact statement. Okay. And she gave herself a 6 for the challenge. So 10 and 6. So I just added an activity. I'm going to go ahead and save my work. By the way, I could have just clicked on view the change grid and it automatically would have done that. But I just wanted to take you through the mechanics. Let's go ahead and view our change grid now with a different activity. We're looking for activity number 22, and right there she is. When it comes to delivering this 5-second pitch, she's plotting in power apathy. She's plotting as a driven analytical. So driven analytical. First, they're an analytical, so it's saying like, I know what I need to say. I know why this message is important, and I'm delivering it because they need to hear it. And so I like that. You feel very compelled to go out there and make this message occur. But it could also come across as being very, what I want to say, direct, and that might not be the style. So what would be the best style for delivering that kind of a pitch? Now, usually these things are done at the earliest stage of meeting someone. So I'm going to say, I think it should be delivered by an expressive driver energy. So the expressive driver energy already has that driver element. They're trying to make something happen. And because the speech or the pitch was already crafted, the analytical burden has been fulfilled. Now they just need to deliver it in a way that is engaging, a way that is captivating, a way that is somehow or another inspiring, motivating, energizing. Are you guys hearing that expressive energy as its secondary energy? Yep. So, um, yeah, well, that's it. Christine threw the word arrogant out. The person who's down here in that driven analytical thing can come across as being arrogant. Might be too strong. How about curt? How about too direct, too blunt? It's the person that's out that becomes really arrogant because they think the sun rises and sets and everything they're saying. But you're on the right track. Not the greatest energy to have around that particular activity. This driven analytical energy is the domain of the know-it-all. And so, that's not going to come across well. So I say I want my pitch delivered by the expressive driver energy. Now then, think about this situation. To make that happen, we're going to need to raise the level of tension up to this area. Let me switch the background back out so you can see these different energies again. Yep. Hopefully, you guys think it's pretty cool. You can swap out these layers, and because depending on what point you're trying to explore, point you're trying to illustrate, the different background images really help do that. So right now, activity number 22 again, she's on the border between a driven analytical and an analytical driver, equal doses of analytical and driver energy. I want her to be an expressive driver, so I need to raise the level of tension, and I could just do pure upgrade maneuvers. So increase the standards, change the task, awaken emotions, boost accountability, and I could actually have her moved up here. Um, but maybe it'd also be good to just move slightly out grid along the way. Don't know that I want to be just there. Maybe I want to be a little bit more out grid because I am delivering this pitch in the hopes that it's going to have impact. So a lot of upgrade and a little bit of out grid. So with that, let's go ahead and talk about these in-grid and out-grid maneuvers, and you can see how the combinations would work. So far, you guys finding this interesting and straightforward enough to play with it a little bit? Yes, would be really reassuring there. Okay. Oh, great, good. Okay, so let's take a look now at the outgrid maneuvers. This is about boosting your drive. So we want you to step out there, take a chance, move it all forward, be more engaged, actually execute on all this. So to do that, we need to increase the risk. That you're taking. So step into the uncomfortable, take a chance, see what happens. Appeal to the ego. Christine, it's important for you to know that the world has been waiting for you to do this. So this really is all about you. Ultimately, you want to be of service to others. You want to take good care of yourself. But let's have a little bit of ego around this. This really is you being the best you can be and helping people in the way that you and only you can actually do. And then inspire people through leadership to take a leadership kind of a role. Because if you don't do this, Christine, then whoever will. And if you're not going to help these people, how are they ever going to be helped? And then the last thing here is we provide performance coaching specifically. So instead of just looking at the general things about coaching, and I'm not to diminish coaching, but a great deal of coaching is all about stepping outside of the discussion, outside of the relationship, just asking really good quality questions and helping people to see things in a different light, different perspectives, different frames. All that's really quite beautiful. Performance coaching is a bit more directive, in fact, considerably more directive. In performance coaching, the agreement has been reached with the client that they want to do a particular thing and they recognize that they are missing certain skills, certain experiences, certain insights. And they are looking at us as the coach to not just coach them, but to give them specific guidance. So this is a little bit more like how an athletic coach operates. So for this particular thing, I would be saying to Christine about providing coaching, let me hear you deliver the pitch. Let me hear you deliver the pitch. And then actually observe her delivery of it, and then identify positive elements in that delivery, identify neutral kind of elements, identify elements that perhaps worked against her, and then give specific corrective guidance, and then have her rework it and try it again. So performance coaching is what we're really talking about. It's about taking someone who is already most of their way to their destination and saying what separates you from where you are and where you want to be most is some refinement on some specific skills. So let's be direct about this. Let's identify them, confront them, deal with them. And so this is definitely a lot of training, a lot of that more guidance, directive kind of guidance there. So it's providing performance coaching. These are the outgrid maneuvers. And so anytime you want someone to become more internally driven, so they are no longer waiting for things outside of them to raise or lower their tension to hit a threshold. We say, no, instead of just raising your tension, I'm going to switch diagrams for a second. Instead of just raising your tension, raising your tension, raising your tension until you hit some threshold of activation, I'm changing the background again, or then lowering your tension and lowering your tension and lowering your tension until you hit some threshold of delegation. What I want to do instead is to raise your level of tension up to power and then move you out grid, or lower your level of tension to power and then turn you out grid. What I'm really trying to do here is probably best illustrated by the engagement ring. So to move you up grid is great, But straight movement upgrade should just keep you in awareness and intention. I want you to take the bull by the horns. I want you to get it done. So I need to move you up grid by increasing the standards, changing the task, awakening emotions, boosting accountability. And I want to move you out grid so you get more intentional, more engaged, more likely to execute. And so to do that, I need to get you to take that risk, step into a higher level of challenge, if you will. I need you to have a little bit of ego around it. I'm not asking you to become, self-consumed, but you need to have a good, strong sense of who you are and what it is that you have to offer and how vital that is to the world in which we live. And so you need to have a little bit of ego. Certainly, most of you on the call are independents. If you don't blow your own horn, don't be disappointed when no one blows it for you. You have to be someone that's got some ego, or what's the likelihood that you're going to present yourself effectively in a competitive marketing and sales environment? So we need that ego. But I need you to view yourself as being a leader of yourself, a leader of your clients, a leader of a whole new movement, whatever it is. I need you to have that. And along the way, I get it. You're going to need to have some coaching because your ability does need to continue to increase. There will be skill gaps. And so this is why we say to people that are coaching oriented, depending on what it is you're trying to get to in your life, you might need a different kind of a coach. I promise you that as a performance coach, you do not want to come to me for life coaching issues. Likewise, I don't think you want to go to a life coach if it's a performance coaching issue. And so we have to recognize that there are these different levels of specialty and they each exist for a reason. And we need to figure out, well, where on the change grid would someone be for that particular type of coaching to be most appropriate? Well, when we're out here, it's about performance coaching because the person's already decided. They've got their vision, they got their mission, they got their purpose, they've got all that intentionality. They've made all these choices. All that stuff is done. Now we're trying to say to them that if they're not at where they want to be, it's because there's some gap in the skill, there's some issue with the approach, whatever it is, and let's fix that. Let's go ahead and do what we can do to fix that. And let's do it directly, save everybody some time. Okay, so those are the outgrid maneuvers. Almost always, when we are working with another person, we do a combination of up and out or down and out to affect the ultimate movement that we really are looking for. If this is a simple program on selling, I teach you only how to raise tension because if they haven't agreed to buy it, they aren't at their threshold yet. Keep raising their tension until they hit it. Or if you're in customer service, which is all about lowering tension, if the person is still upset, you got to keep lowering their tension and lowering their level of tension until they hit their threshold of delegation and let go and say, thanks so much. You've been great help. Life goes on for both of us. But there is that last type of maneuver I want to talk only briefly about, and this has to do with the in-grid maneuvers. In-grid maneuvers are used whenever someone is so far out-grid that they're causing trouble for themselves and others around them. To best illustrate this, well, first let me show you what the maneuvers are. Reduce the risk that the person has chosen to step into. So people that are too far out-grid think they're a superhero, so they tackle impossible situations. I mean, think to land out there, they have to say their level of ability is extremely high. The level of challenge is also extremely high. So to be very far out-grid, they are in a superhero kind of a situation. So what we need to do is to get them to step out of that high risk kind of a situation. We want to appeal to their nobler motives, let them know there are other people that are being impacted by this behavior. See, very often people that are in the outgrid danger zone, too far outgrid, we describe them as being bulls in a china shop. These are people who are so task focused that they will turn to any means necessary in order to achieve the outcome. And that means they can steamroll over a lot of people and crush a lot of people, hurt a lot of people's feelings, etc. They don't believe that the rules apply to them, and so they create policy on the fly purely to get their objective met. Because they're so comfortable with a high level of risk, a high level of challenge, they seek it out. They willingly step into it, but often when they step into that high risk situation, they're dragging others along with them. So they're exposing their organization organization to a different kind of a risk or whatever, because they think they can get away with it because they think the rules don't apply to them. And so there are times when you got to say to that person, you know what, I got to acknowledge, I get it. You're the prima donna. You're so good. Yay, yay, yay. But you've just stepped out of bounds, and we need to have a discussion around that. And so in-grid maneuvers are all about counseling issues, and they're used almost exclusively in situations when people are in the outgrid danger zone where they become really arrogant. Getting back to Christine's label there a little while ago, they're very arrogant. They're very pushy, dominating, aggressive, threatening. They can be very bigoted, evil, warmongering. They can be cruel and brutal to other people in every way that you can imagine. So obviously, sometimes we have to come along and say, wait, 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 wait. We're pulling you out of that situation. Um, we want you to recognize you are hurting a lot of people. I know you're not intending to do that. I know your goal is to achieve the outcome, and I respect that at a certain level. But how you go about doing this is creating so much collateral damage. It's just not worth the pursuit. And so, or we need to review boundaries. Again, they create policy on the fly, or they believe the rules don't apply to them, and so they behave in ways that could result in sexual harassment suits or lawsuits because of inappropriate behavior. Sometimes we have to say to these people, these are the boundaries. And if you step outside of these boundaries, then we're going to take you to task. There's going to be consequences. So we can't afford to have someone who is pulling an organization into harm's way. And then the last one says increase introspection. It used to say seek therapy, but someone thought that was politically incorrect. Nevertheless, it's true. If someone is that far outgrid, that they are being that arrogant, that demanding, that brutal and cruel, we all know as human development professionals that what is at the root of that behavior is insecurity. And they're coping with that insecurity and compensating for the insecurity by becoming the bully. And what this person really needs to do is to sit down with a professional, not me, but someone who really is a psychotherapist or a counselor of some sort or other, and say, where is this coming from? And what are we going to do to help you become a better you? And so I think that when we're dealing with these people in a corporate setting, we often have to say that their issue is beyond the scope of what a manager should be dealing with or what an outside consultant or coach or trainer should be dealing with. Sometimes we need to say, this requires HR to get involved. We really need to document this very carefully because there is dangerous behavior happening. And we do want to help this person, but we need to make sure we're putting them in touch with the level of professional they really need most. So these are in-grid maneuvers. Rarely, hopefully, we will rarely need to do them. But when we need to do them, we need to do them. And that's what this is really all about. So, with that, let's go back. Christine has got nothing on her grid that I'm too worried about. What's activity number 21? Define how I plan to launch DCI on the world mid-end of June 2014. Okay, so look at what she's saying right now. My ability to do that is a 10. The challenge is an 11. I'm being put to the test, and it's a tough test. This is a do or die moment. This is an Olympic win sort of an opportunity. And so all those things I talked about someone being very aggressive and domineering and demanding and brutal and cruel, don't think for 1 minute that those behaviors are only directed outwardly. Sometimes the person directs all those things inwardly and become very critical of their own behavior, become very demanding, very judging of their own sort of behavior. And so, Christine, you're not out there where it'd be a really dangerous thing to be, but you're starting to lean that way. And so, I would definitely want to be, again, in my role as performance coach, I want to be saying to you now, it's great that you've said you're going to launch this on the world mid end of June 2014. Well, what happens if it's the beginning of July? Or what if instead of doing it on the whole world, we decide to focus on the UK within a 2-hour driving radius? So I get it. This is a really important thing, vitally important to your business. But I would hate for you to judge yourself harshly, and as a result of that harsh internal judgment, that you decide to back off on your behavior or whatever. So you know what I mean? It's just kind of, we just want to watch out for that little bit if things start to teeter too far out grid. So, oh, she's adding more to it, and it's got to be it's got to be right. And she says, "I'd be in apathy." Oh, no, no, no! You wouldn't be in apathy. The situation I've just described, you would be out here very much in power. A driven driver, accepts nothing short of success. For them, failure is absolutely not an option. And if there's a struggle and if there's a failure, someone's going to be blamed for it. And very often that blame can be directed inwardly. And so nevertheless, it's still going to have that shutdown impact on it's too much to do. So maybe just a little bit of in-grid thinking around this particular activity. So just reduce the risk a little bit, appeal to your nobler motives, and you would move a little bit out of there. But nevertheless, most of your activities, plotting here and engagement, these are really, really well positioned, really well positioned. Okay, so let me just do one more thing. I'm going to log out as Christine for a second. JOANNE, and PSSWRD, log in. No, don't need to save it. Her personal change grid. Let's choose all activities, view the change grid. All right. So now, Joanne, in your particular case, you do have some activities that are down grid. So we'd want to apply those upgrid maneuvers when it comes to getting your taxes done. Again, maybe just having that accountability piece is all you need. Put a place a deadline around that. Maybe a little bit of emotional attachment as well. Hopefully you're getting a refund. So what would you do with that refund? What difference could that make? Or what are you going to do if you don't get the refund or whatever? Number 16, prepping the supply kits for art class. Maybe this is again one of those deadline sorts of things. You don't want it looming over you. You don't want to be burning the midnight oil the night before your programs, getting these material kits put together. So what can you do now to increase the standards, change the task, awaken emotions, boost accountability? And we still want to turn you out grid as well, so that you attach this to that mission, that purpose, that drive, etc. Now, in your case, I'm concerned about activity number 7 being a bit too far out grid. And so these in-grid maneuvers might help. Let's just remind everyone that's applying for that new job. So I completely get it. Very important, as you're saying, and it's a big job, as you've said. Your ability is very high, a 10. The challenge is a 12. And as you pointed out earlier, part of it's because you really haven't decided what these requirements are for something to even be a candidate for your next best job. We just want to be careful that as this unfolds, that you again, you're so task focused. I'd hate for you to judge yourself harshly around this. While it is true that accountability is important and ultimately the buck stops with you, we want to always approach these kinds of changes from a positive can do sort of place. So we want to protect that feeling of pride and confidence. If we start to judge one another harshly, or we allow ourselves to judge ourselves harshly, we're going to be replacing that pride with shame and that confidence with doubt. And we don't want that to happen. So be careful that this movement out grid is stopped. So the best way to do that right now, though, is to just lower your perceived challenge. So you've given yourself a 12 for the challenge of finding that next great position. Do you think that's really accurate? Is it really impossible? Or is it just really, really difficult? Even if you just backed your perception down to an 11, you have moved a significant distance in grid and away from that judgmental place that being too far out grid can be. Let's see if we're getting some comments here. Yeah, Joanne sharing. Me too. Applying for the new job seems like it's in an odd position. That's true. I mean, remember that movement on the change grid is constant. So our perceptions about every single thing happening in life are in constant flux. So when you fill out a change grid, we're just taking like a snapshot that at the moment in time you fill this out, that's where it was. But again, let me show you how the change grid works. And so, Joanne, I'd like you to reevaluate activity number 7. So when it comes to applying for a new job, you said the size was a 10, and I'm not going to argue with you. There's a lot of work to be done, so maybe that's okay. You said the importance is a 9. That's just on the border of being really important. So do you still think that the importance is a 9? Yep. And I want you to reassess your ability and the challenge. So again, you're going to need to type some numbers to me. Yep, so she's leaving the importance as a 9. How would you rate your ability to apply for the, and by the way, applying for a job and landing the job could be 2 different activities, but I get it, applying for the right jobs. How do you rate your ability to apply for the job? Apply for the job. What's your number? And then the last question is, how challenging do you think it is to apply for that job? So she says ability is high. I could increase that. So that's fine. You're saying your ability right now is a 10. 10 is fine. I want to argue about that. You could even take it up to an 11 if you felt that was more accurate. So, and the challenge is in the interview, not the application. Yeah, now you're doing something in the advanced class. We talk about tension override, that we can be looking at an activity, but rather than rate the activity as written, somehow in our head, we substitute a different activity, but we didn't change the words. And so I would want to change those words. So let's say when it comes to applying for it, you said the challenge isn't all that high. If you gave me a number, well, I'll just throw it out there. Let's say you just said, well, no, the challenge of applying for it is really kind of straightforward. It's a 9. But I want to add an activity. And I want this activity to be winning the job of my dreams. Now the task again is quite high. I'm going to just throw out 10 there. You can update this at your leisure. The importance of doing it, a 10 again. Your ability to win the job of your dreams. Now that's the interview. You want to end up being the best there could possibly. Oh, you want to change the challenge to an 8 to a 6 for applying it. Let's do that. Okay. So how about though when it comes to winning the job, doing that interview in such a way? How would you rate your ability to win the job? And how challenging would it be to win the job? So she goes, to win the job, my ability would be a 5. And how about the challenge for winning that job? How challenging to win that job? The challenge would be a 12. Again, I like it. That's impossible. How about an 11? But I'll let you stay there. I'm going to save my work. I'm going to, again, ask to see the whole change grid. So let's just go ahead and view it. I could have just chosen the specific activities. Now notice she is no longer in that outgrid danger zone when it comes to the application process. But now we've added activity number 17, way up in power stress about landing that job. So different activity. We need to move that one down grid, maybe a little bit out grid as well. All right, let's see if we still got this. Still, well, that's okay. It still feels up there. 12 is fine. 11, I mean, if you had just said an 11, it still would have plotted, and the reading would not have gone all that much. But if you want to change it to an 11, with you need not compromise. You think it's 12, 12 it is. When you update your change grid, you might do that again. All right. So anyway, my last comments, and we're done. It is 2:30 now. I just want to say to you guys that you now all have your own personal change grid, and what you want to do is to periodically come to your change grid, and I'm going to say not less frequently than weekly. So fill out your change grid every single week. Look at each activity and say, do I want to delete it or do I want to keep it? If you want to add activities, add those activities. But then look at your ratings and see if you want to update them and go like, well, when it comes to completing the painting on the walls, the challenge is just not all that great. Let me drop that down. So you can manipulate these any way you want. Just remember to save your work and then view the change grid so that you can see what's going on with you now. So just remember, this is your tool for understanding how you are responding to change, and it's here for you to use forever. So get in the habit of populating your activity list with things that matter most to you, updating your ratings, and then looking at your grid and going, where am I right now? Where do I need to be next? And then how simple is it for me to move myself around? So with that, thank you all very much for participating in Mastering Personal Change. Remember, this is your community, so please spread the news to your colleagues and let's help this organization grow. So with that, thank you all very much. Everyone, have a wonderful weekend. Bye-bye.